Yo, what's going on, everybody? So in this video, I wanted to show you some gameplay and sort of give my first impressions on the Outbreak Prime. So really quick before I start, I'd like to give a big shout out to my good friend Vahro, who allowed me to play on his account and get this gameplay. He's a really cool dude who makes unique content, so definitely check him out. I've left all his links in the description below. So, the Outbreak Prime is the exotic Siva-themed pulse rifle that you get as a result of a freaking crazy cool and like really complicated quest that you get from completing the raid. So, what does it do? Well, the first perk, the Corruption Spreads, enables the gun to launch a Siva swarm that will seek out and damage enemies. I tested this out, so if you land 5 shots on an enemy, it's going to launch the Siva swarm. The ballistics include smooth ballistics, accurized ballistics, and smart drift control. The next perks are Outlaw, Lightweight, Hand-Loaded, Fitted Stock, and the second exotic perk, Virulence. Precision kills release a Siva nanite swarm that attack other enemies. So in short, if you're putting a lot of damage into an enemy, the Siva swarm will activate, and when you get a precision kill with it, it will also activate. It is important to note that the perk does have to recharge. After you activate the Siva swarm with damage or precision kill, you'll need to wait until the weapon starts glowing red with like sort of a small Siva cloud around it. It's pretty apparent. And when you see that Siva cloud around the weapon, that means that the swarm is ready to be released again. Alright, so for my initial thoughts on its performance in PvE, it's not terribly good. While the Siva swarm can like activate while shooting a boss to, add DPS, it really doesn't do like that much damage for it to warrant an exotic slot, in my opinion, at least. Alright, for an example, the Chaos Dogma Raid Scout Rifle is going to completely out DPS this weapon if you're hitting criticals every time because of the triple tap and triple double perks that allow you to have a potential 44 round magazine if you hit all critical hits. And that's just a legendary scout rifle, which would allow you to equip an exotic heavy or special to pair with it. I feel like even using like a Hawksaw or PDX, you'd perform better with that than this exotic. So the Outbreak Prime is not terribly great for killing bosses, and it doesn't seem to be that above average for killing low-level enemies either. I mean, like, the Siva Swarm really didn't do any significant damage. I think it, I don't know, maybe managed to kill a Dreg that was already weak once or twice. Nothing really noticeable at all. I don't know, but who knows? This weapon may get a buff in the future, or I don't know, maybe I possibly just didn't use it enough to really get a good idea of the damage, but it just did not seem that great. So as for PvP, the story really isn't too much different from PvE. In Crucible, it performs decently as a pulse rifle. It's in the same archetype as a Hawksaw or PDX, which is a solid archetype for sure, but it doesn't have really great range or stability. And it has this strange sort of right-leaning recoil pattern, so when you shoot the gun, it's going to like recoil up and to the right, which sort of threw me off at first and might need some getting used to. Personally, all the pulse rifle I've used have either a near vertical or left-leaning recoil pattern, so it's just a bit jarring for it to start going to the right. But after I spent just a little time with this weapon, it really didn't bother me that much. So as for the exotic perks and the Siva Swarm in PvP, it really wasn't that effective in most situations, but I actually managed to find a really cool use for the exotic perk while playing Combined Arms. Combined Arms is the weekly featured playlist. God, I really wish Bungie would bring this playlist around more because it's so much fun. So normally with vehicles in Destiny Crucible, your primary weapon really isn't going to be that powerful against them unless you're like directly hitting the operator, which is pretty challenging at times depending on the vehicle or what direction it's going. But since vehicles can, tank a lot of damage, what I was able to do with the Outbreak Prime was shoot the vehicle, which does still damage the driver a little bit, and that would then activate the Siva Swarm and hunt down and kill them. So I actually managed to get a decent amount of kills on vehicle drivers using this method, which I wouldn't be able to do otherwise if I was using just, any other primary. So I thought that was actually a really cool and completely unexpected use of this weapon. Granted, Combined Arms really isn't around that much, so you're not going to be really using this unless you're playing it like within the next week, or if Bungie decides to add it as a permanent playlist, which Bungie, if you're listening to this, please. So yeah, anyway, all in all, for my first impressions, I'd say this, I don't know, it's a decent exotic. You can throw it on and have fun with it. It's really unique in its own regard, but it is very hard to acquire, and please don't feel too upset if you're not able to rush and get this right away. because I know the quest is really hard and it does require cooperation from some friends. So if you're one of those players that goes solo, it's going to be much more challenging to get this. But like I just said, don't feel too upset if you can't get it right away. It really isn't that incredible. I mean, in my opinion, it honestly seems a bit of a gimmick, I guess. But considering how low the Siva swarm damage is, I think it would be really, really cool if the detection radius of the nanites, you know, like the Siva swarm things, was like increased, and the speed at which they follow enemies increased as well. I think that would make it much more fun to use. So anyway, those are my initial thoughts on the Outbreak Prime exotic pulse rifle. Hopefully you all enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching as always, and I will see you next time. So normally with vehicles in Destiny Crucible, your primary weapon, isn't really that powerful against them, unless you're what the fuck is up with? Why can't I say directly?